The Basement Door. A long horror story inspired by real missing person cases in the USA. There are certain memories that never leave you, not because they're happy, not because they're important, but because your brain refuses to let them go. For me, that memory begins in the summer of 2016. I was 19 years old and working as a delivery driver in a small rural town in Pennsylvania. Most of my deliveries were simple: pizza, groceries, hardware supplies, nothing unusual. The town itself was quiet, the kind of place where people left their doors unlocked and waved to strangers. Everybody knew everybody. At least that's what we thought. The house sat at the end of a narrow dirt road surrounded by thick woods. Locals called it the Miller property, an old farmhouse built sometime in the 1940s. The owner was a man named Harold Miller, 72 years old, widower, lived alone. People described him as strange but harmless. He rarely spoke, rarely smiled, rarely left his property. Every few weeks, I'd deliver groceries there. The routine was always the same: drive up, leave the bags on the porch, collect payment, leave. Simple. But there was one thing about that house that always bothered me: the basement door. It wasn't attached to the house. Instead, it sat alone in the backyard. Two rusted metal doors built into a concrete mound, like something you'd see covering an underground storm shelter. Every time I visited, the doors were secured with a massive chain and heavy padlock. Every single time. Rain, snow, summer, winter, always locked. Until one afternoon. I arrived with Harold's groceries around 4 p.m. As I stepped out of my truck, I noticed something unusual. The basement doors were open. Not wide open, just enough to reveal darkness below. A narrow staircase descended underground. I remember staring for several seconds. Something felt wrong. Not scary, just wrong. Like seeing a familiar face with a different expression. Harold appeared on the porch. For the first time ever, he looked nervous. Very nervous. "Leave the groceries." His voice sounded sharp. I nodded. As I carried the bags up the steps, I noticed sweat running down his face, despite the cool weather. His eyes kept drifting toward the open basement doors, almost as if he was worried about them. When I finished unloading the groceries, he handed me cash. Then he spoke. "Did you go near the cellar?" "No." "Good." His answer came too quickly. Then he practically shoved me off the property. The entire encounter lasted less than 2 minutes. I drove away feeling uneasy, but I forgot about it within days. Life moved on. Then people started disappearing. The first was a 23-year-old college student named Megan. She vanished while driving home from work. Police found her vehicle abandoned near a forest access road. No sign of struggle, no evidence, no answers. Everyone assumed she'd been kidnapped. Months passed, nothing. Then a second disappearance occurred. A local hunter, 41 years old, experienced outdoorsman. He entered the woods and never returned. Search teams found some equipment, nothing else. The town grew anxious. Parents became protective. People stopped walking alone at night. Rumors spread everywhere. Some blamed a serial killer. Others blamed drug traffickers. Others whispered about cults hiding in the forest. Nobody knew the truth. Years passed, no arrests, no suspects, no bodies. The disappearances slowly became local legends, unsolved mysteries people discussed over coffee. Then came October 2021, the event that changed everything. Harold Miller died. Heart attack, natural causes. The county took possession of the property because he had no living relatives. Several weeks later, contractors arrived to prepare the farmhouse for sale. One of them noticed a foul smell near the backyard cellar. At first, they assumed an animal had died underneath. They cut the chain and opened the doors. What they discovered made national news. The underground space wasn't a normal cellar. It was enormous, far larger than the house itself. A maze of rooms extended beneath the property. Some sections appeared homemade. Others looked professionally constructed. There were storage areas, workshops, hallways, locked chambers. Police immediately secured the scene. Investigators spent days documenting everything. Nobody expected what came next. Inside one room, they discovered personal belongings. Hundreds of items. Wallets, jewelry, photographs, driver's licenses, shoes, backpacks. Many belonged to missing people, including Megan, including the hunter, including individuals who had disappeared decades earlier. The entire town went into shock. News crews flooded the area. Investigators worked around the clock. Forensic teams searched every inch of the underground complex. Then they found the hidden room, a reinforced steel door concealed behind shelves. It required cutting equipment to open. Veteran officers later admitted they wished they hadn't. The room contained evidence linking Harold to numerous disappearances, stretching back nearly 30 years. The details were never fully released publicly. Authorities kept much of the investigation sealed, out of respect for victims' families. But enough information emerged to horrify the nation. The harmless old man everybody knew had apparently been hiding unimaginable secrets beneath their feet. People struggled to accept it. This was Harold, the quiet guy buying groceries, the old man feeding birds on his porch, the lonely widower. Not a monster, except he was. The story should have ended there, but it didn't, because during the investigation, detectives discovered something they couldn't explain. Near the back of the underground structure was another locked passageway. Different construction, different materials, older than everything else. Investigators assumed it led to storage space. When they finally opened it, they found a narrow corridor extending deep underground, far deeper than expected. The tunnel continued for nearly 300 feet before ending abruptly. Nothing inside. No furniture, no evidence, no purpose. Just an empty tunnel. At least that's what officials initially reported. Months later, one detective anonymously spoke to a journalist. According to him, the public version wasn't completely accurate. He claims something had been discovered at the tunnel's end. Scratches. Thousands of scratches covering the walls. Some appeared decades old. Others looked recent. Words had been carved into the concrete. Names, dates, messages. Most were impossible to read. But one phrase reportedly appeared over and over. The same phrase, repeated hundreds of times. Don't let him hear you. Authorities never confirmed the story. Officially, the tunnel contained nothing unusual. Yet rumors spread anyway. And those rumors became even stranger after another detail emerged. Investigators reviewing Harold's financial records discovered electricity bills far higher than expected, even accounting for the underground rooms. Something had consumed power continuously, day and night, for years. But nobody could determine what. No equipment matching the usage was ever found. No machinery, no generators, nothing. The records made no sense. Then came the security photographs. One image leaked online. It supposedly showed the far end of the tunnel during the initial search. The photograph was grainy, dark, difficult to interpret. But people noticed something. Near the back wall appeared a shape. Tall, human-like, standing in darkness. Officials claimed it was a shadow. Most experts agreed. Yet many people weren't convinced. The image spread across internet forums. Paranormal investigators became obsessed with it. Conspiracy theories exploded. The county eventually removed the photo from public records. But by then, it was too late. thousands had already saved copies. Today, nobody knows the full truth. Perhaps the tunnel was meaningless. Perhaps the scratches were exaggerated. Perhaps the shadow was merely poor lighting. Maybe. What I do know is this. About 6 months after the property investigation ended, I attended an auction selling items recovered from the farmhouse. Most things were ordinary. Tools, furniture, books, kitchen equipment. Near the end of the auction, an old tape recorder appeared. The auctioneer explained it had been found in a storage room underground. Nobody knew whether it worked. Curiosity got the better of me. I bought it for $20. That decision remains one of the biggest mistakes of my life. The recorder functioned perfectly. Inside was a cassette tape. Only one. The tape contained nearly 6 hours of audio. Most of it was silence, occasionally static. Nothing remarkable, until the final few minutes. I remember sitting alone in my apartment, listening through headphones. Static crackled. A distant metallic sound echoed. Then a voice appeared. Weak, trembling, terrified. A woman's voice. She whispered, "He's coming." My heart stopped. The voice continued. Silence followed. Then another sound emerged. Slow footsteps. Approaching. Getting closer. 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 The woman began crying. Then the recording ended. No explanation. No identification. Nothing. Police later examined the tape. They couldn't determine when it had been recorded. They couldn't identify the woman. They couldn't even verify whether it was connected to any crime. Eventually, they returned it. To this day, I still own that cassette, locked inside a box I never opened. Sometimes I think about throwing it away, but I never do, because part of me wonders who that woman was, and another part wonders what happened after the recording stopped. The farmhouse is gone now, demolished years ago. The underground chambers filled with concrete. The land sits empty. Grass covers everything. If you drove past it today, you'd never know what once existed there. You'd never know about the hidden rooms, the missing people, the tunnel, the messages scratched into concrete, or the frightened voice trapped forever on a cassette tape. Most people believe evil looks obvious. A monster, a criminal, a person who stands out. Real life doesn't work that way. Sometimes evil waves hello. Sometimes it smiles. Sometimes it lives quietly at the end of a dirt road for 30 years, while everyone calls it harmless. And sometimes the scariest thing isn't discovering the monster. It's realizing you've been standing only a few feet away from it all along. A long horror story inspired by real types of cases reported in the United States. I didn't believe in ghosts. Not then, not now. What I do believe in is that there are things that happen in this world that nobody can explain. Things that don't fit into logic, psychology, or common sense. And what happened at the motel in 2018 is one of them. I worked the night shift at a roadside motel outside Oklahoma City. The kind of motel travelers used when they needed a cheap room for one night before getting back on the highway. Most nights were boring. Check people in, answer a few phone calls, make coffee, watch security cameras. That was it. The quiet was actually the best part of the job, until room 314. The room had a reputation long before I started working there. Every workplace has stories. Most are nonsense. Employees claimed guests complained about strange noises. Some reported hearing furniture move. Others said they heard someone knocking on their door at night. When they opened it, nobody was there. I laughed whenever coworkers talked about it. Old building, thin walls, overactive imaginations. Simple. Then one rainy Thursday changed everything. Around 11:40 p.m., a man checked into room 314. His name was Michael. Late 30s, business traveler. Polite, normal. At 12:27 a.m., the front desk phone rang. Front desk. Silence. I checked the caller ID. Room 314. Hello? A man's voice finally answered. Can you send someone up here? What's wrong, sir? A pause. Then, I think someone is in my room. I sat up straighter. What do you mean? I heard somebody breathing. Are they still there? I don't know. The line went quiet. I heard movement. Then Michael returned. Forget it. Sir, I think I'm just tired. The call ended. I logged it and moved on. An hour later, the phone rang again. Room 314. This time, Michael sounded scared. Listen, he said. Can you tell me who is staying in the room above me? I pulled up the occupancy chart. No one. What? The room above yours is empty. Silence. Then, that's impossible. Why? Because somebody has been walking around up there for the last hour. I checked the cameras. Nobody entered the vacant room. Nobody left it. Nothing unusual. I offered to switch rooms. He declined. I'll be okay. He didn't sound okay. At 2:13 a.m., another call came. This one was different. Michael was whispering. Don't hang up. Sir? Just stay on the line. What happened? For several seconds he didn't answer. Then I heard him breathing heavily. Finally he whispered, someone just knocked on my bathroom door. A cold feeling ran through me. What? I'm alone. Maybe plumbing noise. It knocked 3 times. My stomach tightened. I looked at the security cameras again. No movement in the hallway. No one entering the room. Nothing. Then Michael said something I'll never forget. It's knocking again. 3 soft taps echoed through the phone. Tap, tap, tap. I heard them. Not loud, but real. I know what I heard. My skin crawled. Leave the room, I told him. Come to the lobby. Instead of answering, he gasped. Then the call disconnected. I immediately called back. No answer. Again, no answer. I grabbed the master key and headed upstairs. Completely silent. Rain hammered against the windows. Room 314 stood at the end of the corridor. The light above the door flickered. I knocked. No response. Again, nothing. I unlocked the door. The room was empty. The television was on. The bathroom light glowed. Michael's suitcase sat beside the bed. His laptop was open. His phone was on the nightstand. But Michael was gone. Completely gone. I searched the room, bathroom, closet, under the bed. Nothing. It was as if he had vanished. Police arrived within 20 minutes. They treated it as a missing person case. They reviewed camera footage. That's when things became impossible. The hallway camera showed nobody leaving room 314. Nobody. Not Michael. Not anyone else. From the moment he entered the room until I opened the door, the camera never captured him exiting. Police thought the footage was corrupted. They seized the recording system. Experts reviewed everything. No tampering. No missing frames. No edits. Nothing. According to the footage, Michael entered room 314 and never came out. Days turned into weeks. The investigation stalled. No body, no evidence, no explanation. His family pleaded for answers. None came. Eventually, the story faded from the news. People moved on. But strange things continued happening, especially during night shifts. 1 month later, I received another call from room 314. The room was vacant. No guest, no reservation, no occupant. Yet the desk phone displayed room 314. I stared at it. The ringing continued. Hello? Static. Heavy static. Then a voice. Weak. Distant. Almost impossible to hear. But I recognized it immediately. Michael. I swear it was Michael. Help me. The line crackled. "Sir, help me." Then silence. The call ended. I checked the room immediately. Empty, no one there. Phone untouched. Police dismissed the report. They suggested stress, fatigue, imagination. I almost believed them, until another employee experienced the same thing. Then another. Then another. Each described the same voice. A frightened man asking for help. Always from room 314. Always after midnight. Management eventually disconnected the call. Room phone. The calls continued. That should have been impossible. Yet they continued. By then, most employees refused to enter the room alone. Guests occasionally complained about waking up to someone standing beside their bed. Whenever they switched on the lamp, nobody was there. Several requested refunds. One family left in the middle of the night. A woman claimed she heard a man crying inside the bathroom. Her husband heard it too. The room was empty. Management considered permanently closing room 314, but business was struggling. Instead, they renovated it. New carpet, new paint, new furniture, everything replaced. For a while, the complaints stopped. Then came the security footage, the footage that ended my career at that motel. One night around 3 a.m., I noticed movement on camera 12, room 314's hallway. A figure stood outside the door, male, motionless, watching. The image blurred, then sharpened. My blood froze. It looked exactly like Michael. Same build, same face, same clothing he wore on check-in night. I immediately radioed security. They arrived less than a minute later. Nobody was there. The hallway was empty, but the camera had recorded everything. Or so we thought. When we replayed the footage, the figure was gone. Not walked away, gone. Missing from the recording entirely. Only the empty hallway remained. I watched it 3 times. The figure I'd seen moments earlier no longer existed. That was the first time I genuinely felt afraid. Not nervous, not uneasy, afraid. A few weeks later, I quit. I couldn't take it anymore. The calls, the stories, the sleepless nights. I found another job and tried forgetting about room 314. Years passed. Then, in 2024, I received an unexpected message. A former coworker contacted me. The motel had been sold. New owners planned major renovations. During demolition, workers discovered something hidden behind a maintenance wall, connected to room 314. A narrow crawl space, barely large enough for a person. Inside they found old belongings, food wrappers, blankets, bottles, evidence suggesting someone had secretly lived there years earlier. But that wasn't the disturbing part. Among the items was a weathered notebook. Most pages were unreadable. Water damage had ruined them. But investigators managed to recover a few entries. One entry was dated nearly a decade before Michael disappeared. It described hearing voices in the room. Another described knocking sounds. Another mentioned seeing a man standing beside the bed. The final readable page contained only one sentence, written repeatedly, over and over, dozens of times. The same sentence. Investigators never connected the notebook to a specific person. No fingerprints, no DNA, nothing useful. The motel was eventually demolished. Today the property is an empty lot. People drive past it every day without knowing what happened there. Without knowing how many stories were attached to that room. Without knowing about the missing traveler who walked into room 314 and was never seen again. Maybe there was a logical explanation. Maybe the police missed something. Maybe every strange event had a rational cause. I'd like to believe that. I really would. But sometimes, late at night, I remember the phone pressed against my ear. I remember the whisper, the fear in the voice, the desperation, and the words that still haunt me years later. Help me. What scares me isn't that I heard it. What scares me is that part of me still wonders whether Michael was alive when he made that call. Where exactly was he calling from? Because according to every record, every camera, and every police report, there was nobody inside room 314. Yet the phone kept ringing, and somebody kept answering from the other side. I grew up in a small town in the state of Ohio, where everyone knew everyone else's business. Nothing unusual ever happened there. At least, that's what we all believed. Back in 2014, my cousin Rachel rented an old two-story house on the edge of town. The place was cheap, which should have been a warning sign. The landlord claimed the previous tenants had simply moved away. Rachel didn't ask many questions because she was a single mother with a 6-year-old son and needed somewhere affordable. The first few weeks were normal. Then, strange things started happening. It began with little things. Rachel would leave kitchen cabinets closed and find them open when she returned from work. Food disappeared faster than it should have. At first, she blamed her son. "Did you eat the cookies?" "No, Mom." "What about the cereal?" "I didn't touch it." Every parent knows kids lie sometimes, so she didn't think much of it. A month later, she noticed muddy footprints on the laundry room floor. The weird thing was that the footprints appeared overnight, and they were much larger than hers. She cleaned them up and assumed someone had tracked dirt inside earlier. The following week, she woke up at around 3 a.m. because she heard what sounded like footsteps upstairs. Slow, deliberate. One step, then another, then silence. Rachel grabbed her phone and searched the house. Nothing. No open windows. No unlocked doors. No sign of anyone. The next morning, she convinced herself she'd imagined it. But the incidents kept happening. Sometimes, she would hear a faint scraping noise coming from inside the walls. Sometimes, objects changed places. Her son began telling her that a man watched him sleep. Children have vivid imaginations, so she dismissed it. Until one night, Rachel woke up thirsty and walked downstairs for water. As she entered the kitchen, she noticed something odd. The back door was slightly open, only a few inches. She was certain she had locked it. Her heart started pounding. She grabbed a knife from the counter and checked the house. Again, nothing. The next day, she bought a cheap security camera online. It arrived 3 days later. She installed it in the living room, facing the hallway, and left it recording overnight. That decision probably saved her life. The following morning, she reviewed the footage. At first, everything looked normal. The house sat in darkness. Nothing moved. Then at 2:17 a.m., something appeared. A panel in the hallway ceiling slowly shifted. Rachel leaned closer to the screen. The panel opened just enough for a hand to emerge. A human hand. The fingers gripped the edge. Then a man's face appeared. Police? That seeing that face was the most terrifying moment of her life. The man carefully lowered himself from the ceiling. He wore dirty clothing and moved with practiced confidence. He wasn't breaking into the house. He already knew it. He walked into the kitchen, opened the refrigerator, ate food, drank milk straight from the container. Then he wandered through the house. At one point, he stood outside her bedroom door, watching, just standing there, for nearly 10 minutes. Rachel called 911 immediately. Police arrived within minutes. Officers searched the property and discovered a hidden crawl space running between parts of the attic and the walls. Inside, they found blankets, empty food containers, water bottles, and evidence that someone had been living there for weeks. The man was gone. He had apparently heard Rachel moving around and escaped through an opening near the roof before police arrived. For the next several days, officers searched the area. They eventually caught him less than 2 miles away. According to investigators, he had been homeless and had secretly entered the house through an access point in the attic shortly after Rachel moved in. He had been living above her ceiling the entire time, listening, watching, waiting until everyone was asleep before coming down. The story spread throughout town. People were horrified. Rachel moved out immediately. Most of us assumed the nightmare was over, but it wasn't. Several months later, one of the officers involved in the case spoke at a community meeting. He said something that still gives me chills. During the investigation, detectives reviewed more footage from Rachel's camera. There was one clip they never released publicly. In that video, recorded 2 nights before she discovered him, the man entered her son's bedroom. He stood beside the child's bed for over 20 minutes, not moving, just staring. No one could explain why. The officer admitted that even veteran investigators found the footage disturbing. Rachel never watched that recording. The police advised against it. Years passed. Life moved on. Then, another detail surfaced. The landlord had lied. The previous tenants hadn't simply moved away. They had reported hearing footsteps in the ceiling. They had complained about missing food. They had claimed someone was living inside the walls. Nobody believed them. Eventually, they broke their lease and left. The landlord never told Rachel. To this day, whenever I hear unexplained noises in an attic or crawl space, I think about that story. Most houses creak. Most strange sounds have logical explanations, but sometimes they don't. And the scariest part isn't ghosts. It's realizing the thing making those noises might be a real person. Someone close enough to hear you breathe. Someone who knows your routines. Someone hiding only a few feet away while you sleep. Because unlike monsters, real people don't disappear when you turn on the lights.